At our divorce hearing, my husband mocked me, then the judge read my letter. The courtroom was filled with quiet whispers and restless eyes, but nothing hurt more than the sound of my husband's laughter echoing against the wooden walls. It wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It carried years of disrespect, broken promises, and silent cruelty in a single mocking smile. Everyone looked at me as though they expected me to crumble. Even I wondered if this would be the day I finally broke. But no one in that room knew that a sealed letter rested in the judge's hands, a letter I had written the night before after years of carrying a truth that had never been spoken aloud. Within the next few minutes, everything would change, and the man who believed he had already won would discover that dignity is stronger than humiliation and that kindness leaves a mark no cruelty can erase. If stories about kindness, hope, and second chances mean something to you, we'd love for you to support Kindness Tales' journey by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs encouragement, subscribing to the channel, and telling us in the comments whether you believe kindness can change a person's life. My name was Evelyn Harper, and on that bright Monday morning, the sunlight pouring through the courthouse windows felt strangely warm despite the coldness in my heart. Outside, people hurried through the city with coffee cups and busy schedules, completely unaware that inside one courtroom, 15 years of marriage were coming to an end. I had imagined this day many times, but reality was different. There were no dramatic tears, no shouting, and no desperate attempts to save what had already died. There was only silence, paperwork, and the weight of memories that refused to disappear. I had met Adrian Cole when we were both young and hopeful. He was ambitious, confident, and charming in ways that made everyone believe he could accomplish anything. I admired his determination, and he admired my quiet optimism. We built a life together, one small dream at a time. We bought a modest home with peeling paint, planted flowers in the front yard, and celebrated every little achievement as though it were the greatest victory in the world. For a while, happiness felt ordinary, and ordinary was beautiful. The changes came so slowly that I hardly noticed them. Success arrived quickly for Adrian, and with every promotion, he seemed to leave another piece of humility behind. He became impatient with imperfections and embarrassed by anything that didn't fit the polished image he wanted the world to see. I stopped being his partner and became someone he corrected, criticized, and quietly ignored. Every achievement of mine became insignificant. Every mistake became proof that I wasn't enough. Friends noticed the distance between us, but I always smiled and insisted everything was fine. I believed marriage required sacrifice, patience, and forgiveness. I kept waiting for the man I had fallen in love with to return. Instead, the years taught me that love cannot survive where respect disappears. When my mother became seriously ill, I devoted months to caring for her. During those difficult days, I watched life from hospital rooms instead of vacations or dinner parties. Adrian hated the inconvenience. He rarely visited and often complained that my priorities had changed. What he never understood was that kindness is never an inconvenience. It is a choice we make when someone needs us most. After my mother passed away, something inside me changed forever. Grief has a strange way of removing illusions. I realized I had spent years trying to earn love that should never have required earning. For the first time, I imagined a future where peace mattered more than appearances. When I asked Adrian for a divorce, he laughed as though I had told a joke. He assumed I would change my mind. When I didn't, he became confident that the court would leave me with very little. He had more money, more influence, and a team of expensive attorneys. I had only honesty and the quiet certainty that my worth could never be measured by bank accounts. The hearing began like every legal proceeding. Documents were reviewed. Financial records were discussed. Lawyers spoke in careful language. Adrian sat comfortably, occasionally glancing toward me with a smile that suggested complete victory. Then he made a remark that filled the courtroom with uncomfortable silence. He implied that I had contributed nothing meaningful to our marriage and that I had simply lived from his success. Several people lowered their eyes. Others looked toward me, waiting to see if I would respond. I didn't. The judge noticed the sealed envelope resting beside the case file. Earlier that morning, I had asked permission to submit a personal letter. It wasn't evidence. It wasn't an accusation. It was simply my final statement. The judge opened it. Every word inside had been written after a sleepless night filled with memories. I wrote about the young couple who once painted walls together because they couldn't afford professionals. I wrote about the evenings I stayed awake helping Adrian prepare for important presentations while working my own full-time job. I described the years spent supporting his dreams without asking for recognition. I wrote about caring for both his father during illness and my own mother without complaint. I admitted my failures honestly, but I also explained that dignity should never be mistaken for weakness. The letter never attacked Adrian. It never insulted him. Instead, it thanked him for teaching me the difference between being loved and simply being needed. It explained that I no longer wished to win against him because peace was a greater victory than revenge. It ended with one sentence that seemed to settle over the courtroom like morning sunlight. I forgive you, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve freedom. The room became completely silent. Even Adrian's confident smile disappeared. The judge paused before speaking. He explained that courts divide property according to law, but they cannot measure compassion, sacrifice, or quiet strength. He commended the dignity shown throughout the proceedings and reminded everyone present that respect remains valuable even when relationships end. Something unexpected happened then. Adrian looked different. For the first time in years, the certainty vanished from his face. His expression carried something unfamiliar: regret. Real regret rarely arrives with dramatic speeches. It appears quietly when someone finally sees themselves through another person's truth. The hearing concluded according to the law. Assets were divided fairly. The paperwork was signed. People gathered their belongings and prepared to leave. There was no celebration because divorce is rarely a victory. It is simply the closing of one chapter so another can begin. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun illuminated the city streets. I stood alone for several moments, breathing deeply. The weight I had carried for years seemed lighter than I had that morning. I wasn't leaving with everything I had once dreamed of, but I was leaving with something more valuable. I was leaving with myself. The following months were not easy. Healing never follows a straight path. Some mornings I questioned every decision I had made. Other days I smiled for no reason except realizing I no longer lived in constant fear of criticism. I rented a small apartment filled with sunlight and plants. I volunteered at a community literacy center where adults learn to read. Every week I met people rebuilding lives after unimaginable hardship. Their courage reminded me that new beginnings rarely arrive wrapped in comfort. They arrive disguised as uncertainty. One afternoon, an elderly woman attending the literacy program thanked me for believing in her. She held my hand and said that kindness is remembered longer than success. Those simple words stayed with me because they echoed everything my mother had once taught me. Months later, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Adrian. There were no excuses inside. No attempts to erase the past. He admitted that success had made him arrogant and that losing our marriage forced him to confront the person he had become. He thanked me for never responding to cruelty with cruelty. He wrote that hearing my letter in court had become the hardest and most important moment of his life. I read every word carefully. Then I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not because I wanted to forget it, but because forgiveness doesn't always mean returning. Sometimes it simply means releasing bitterness while continuing forward. Years passed. The Literacy Center grew into a larger community program helping families, seniors, and children. Volunteers came from every background imaginable. Together, we created a place where no one felt invisible. Watching people rediscover confidence reminded me that broken hearts can still build beautiful things. One spring morning, while standing outside the center surrounded by blooming flowers and children's laughter, I realized that the happiest chapter of my life had begun only after the chapter one feared losing had ended. Life has a remarkable way of rewarding those who refuse to let pain define them. We cannot choose every hardship we face, but we can choose whether disappointment hardens us or deepens our compassion.
Il chose compassion.
That choice didn't erase my scars, but it transformed them into reminders that survival is possible, hope is real, and kindness remains powerful even in the darker seasons. If this story touched your heart, we'd be grateful if you shared your thoughts and supported Kindness Tales' journey by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who may need a little hope today. Special request: before you leave, please tell us in the comments, what does forgiveness mean to you? Your words may encourage someone who is quietly fighting their own battle. As I walked away from the courthouse that unforgettable day, I thought I was leaving behind a failed marriage. I didn't realize I was walking toward a life built on peace instead of fear, purpose instead of approval, and kindness instead of resentment. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving someone wrong. Sometimes the greatest victory is quietly becoming the person pain could never destroy.